Good afternoon. My name is Allison Kaplan. I'm Director of Education at the National First Ladies Library and Historic Site in Canton, Ohio. And I want to wish everyone a very happy Veterans Day. I'm really excited about our program today. And before we get started, I just want to mention a few upcoming programs and other things going on at our site. So one of the special things about this Veterans Day is that our collaborators at National Park Service have announced that beginning today, U.S. veterans and Gold Star families will gain lifetime access to America's national parks, wildlife refuges, and other public federal lands. So free access to those Gold Star families and veterans. So that's really exciting, and that includes our site as well. So we want to promote that as part of today's event. So besides today's event, which is in conjunction with Stark Library, so it allows you to screen a film through Stark Library's Hoopla service in your spare time, and then connect with someone locally pertinent to the film to discuss it. I want to mention some of our other upcoming programs. The National First Ladies Library has a educational box that you can order each month inspired by different ladies in science. It's called Ladies in the Lab. And our November scientist is Hattie Lamar. And you may actually know her as a classic movie star, but she was actually an inventor too. So if you're interested in that box, it's geared to elementary age students, and it has all sorts of activities and information about the history about that specific scientist, behind the scientist, and activities inspired to understanding those STEM concepts behind what the scientist accomplished. So we're excited about that. Then Friday, we have a talk here on Zoom again. We're taking a field trip to Bowling Green State University, where we're going to meet with their pop culture library, and they're going to take us through campaign pins related to First Ladies and women in politics. So that's this Friday, the 13th at 10 a.m. It should be really fun. There's a lot of really cool stuff. If you are looking for a new read, on November 19th, our virtual book club will be meeting up here at noon to discuss The Invention of Wings by Sue Monk Kidd. It's a really fun and an intriguing book about the Grimke sisters and an enslaved young woman, Hetty, who helped them to better understand slavery and become abolitionists. So it's a fictional book. It's really riveting. I wasn't able to put it down. So again, November 19th, it's not too soon to register. We're also really, really excited to announce some of our holiday programs coming up. One of them is also literary as well. If you are a fan of Louisa May Alcott, you may be picking up Little Women around the holidays. And we are going to take a trip on December 2nd at noon on Zoom to the Orchard House. And we are going to experience a historical living history performance by their executive director, Jan Turnquist, who will be performing as Louisa May Alcott. So that's really great. And for that month, our film that you can connect with on Hoopla is actually inspired by Louisa May Alcott too. So that talk is going to stand in for our monthly film discussion as well. And we will link information on our Facebook and Eventbrite about accessing the documentary about Orchard House. We also have two really fun I've got a cat that is right in my face right now, so excuse Munson, but we have a really cool upcoming program about First Ladies and Christmas. One is December 14th. Christmas crafting with Betty Ford. So if you are a crafty person, you might want to meet up with us then. And if you just want to sit back and learn more about First Ladies and Christmas, you can access our Talk with a Curator starting December 17th. We're going to be talking about Nancy Reagan and her amazing Christmas cards. And if you saw that picture of Nancy Reagan and Mr. T and you were intrigued, stop by on the 17th and find out more. So without further ado, I am so excited about our program today. Before I introduce our speaker, again, we are going to be discussing Served Like a Girl. I want to give you a chance to experience the film if you haven't seen it. So we're very quickly going to screen the preview of Served Like a Girl, and then I'll introduce our speaker and we'll get started. See, here it is.
Women will be able to contribute to our mission in ways they could not before. They'll be allowed to drive tanks, fire mortars, and lead infantry soldiers into combat. Everything else that was previously open only to men.
Allowed in combat? What do you think I was doing over there? I wasn't playing Legos. I wasn't sitting at the fob pushing papers. Like, I was in a war zone.
We'd be flying 50 feet over enemy territory.
I was always attached to infantry and armor.
I was a power generator mechanic.
I'm a veteran, 11 years military police. The stuff that we do for veterans in the United States sucks.
So I get to the VA and I tell them, you know, I'm a veteran. And they said, well, we only have services for male veterans. I go from a lieutenant in the Army and in the blink of an eye, I'm homeless. And it's strictly because of my gender. We also serve. We also die for our country.
Like, our guys aren't the only ones coming home with PTSD.
So we're going to create this event and we're going to create this spokesperson who will let people know what the issues are for women veterans.
Welcome to the Miss Veteran America competition.
We're part of something bigger than ourselves.
Miss Veteran America is a voice.
We are not second-class veterans. We are not damsels in distress. We are warriors. This is the woman that I want representing my country, the woman who was willing to raise her right hand and die for it.
2020 was different, to say the least. We had
Okay. So with that, I want to introduce our speaker today. So I am really excited to connect up with Dr. Margaret DeLillo-Storey. She is a licensed clinical counselor and supervisor with a doctorate degree in psychology. She specializes in trauma and resiliency with a focus on total wellness. She is currently working in peri-local schools as the district mental health and wellness counselor and is a contracted provider with the Stark County Educational Service Center with the Trauma, Resiliency, and Education Collaboration. She's a founding member of Traumatized Child Task Force, now known as Trauma, Resiliency, and Education Collaboration. Dr. DeLillo-Storey is a nationally recognized speaker in the area of trauma, resiliency, motivation, and wellness. She is a certified Dare to Lead facilitator, sharing the works of Dr. Bren Brown to strengthen leaders and organizations in creating environments that foster resilience, vulnerability, and daring leadership. Dr. DeLillo-Storey is a contributing faculty member at Walden University. She is a retired combat Army officer serving in the areas of combat medic, nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare, retention, morale, welfare, and support, plans, operations, and communications, and retired as a logistician. She was instrumental in the setup of Perry High School's JROTC program. Dr. D, as she is known to many, attended a national Women Veterans Network training and became a group leader in Stark County. She's very active community member, serving on numerous boards and committees as well as volunteering. She's been married to her husband Dwayne for 24 years, I think over, because this is an older bio, right? And has 2 children, a son Nick and daughter Courtney. So we want to welcome Dr. DeLillo-Storey here today. We're so excited to have you to talk to us about your experience as a veteran and about the film. We want to encourage anyone who is watching, whether you're streaming on Facebook or if you're here with us on Zoom, please feel free to add any questions that you have to the chat, and we are happy to get started. And I want to start by wishing you a very happy Veterans Day, Margaret.
Thank you very much, and happy Veterans Day to all of my fellow veterans nationwide and to the families of those who did not return home alive.
So I know I just read your very lavish bio here, but can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, about your time in the military and your transition to civilian life?
Yeah, so when I first went, let me just start by saying joining the military was never anything that as a young child I spoke of doing. It was never anything I aspired to do. But I ended up joining shortly right out of high school. I graduated in 80 and then decided after working a year, yeah, there has to be a little bit more. There was some other stuff going on and I thought, yeah, let me just go do this. Needless to say, initially, my parents were not on board with it. They were not happy. And part of that was my fault. It's the way that I did it. I kind of just up and did it. But it ended up being the best thing that I ever did for me personally. And then my parents and family was very much on board and very, very supportive. I started off joining the reserves thinking if I didn't like it, I could do anything 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer and honor my commitment. I ended up loving it. The opportunity it provided, just the stuff that was available, even back then, you're talking, 40 years ago now, to women. Although we were closed out of a lot of things, there were still more opportunity in this realm than there was if I'd have stayed in the civilian sector during that time period. I spent 23 years. I was medically retired, not by choice, forced medical retirement. And, I often laugh and say, had I not been medically retired back in 2003, I probably would still be serving. Hopefully in a different capacity than what I was at that point. But the transition, I will tell you, was very, very difficult. Military life and culture is very, very different. It's different than anything we have in the civilian sector. You can't even compare it to a club because the camaraderie, what you share at the level that you share it at, there's just no comparison. And so to go from what we have on these bases, what we have in our units with one another to coming back to Canton, Ohio, where we had nothing. I mean, I didn't even know where other vets lived other than those that I served with that were in our area. But to not have that accessibility to those things that we were familiar with, it was quite the transition. More so coming back from a war zone than just coming off of a training mission or a training duty. Coming back home after the war, I think, was probably one of the most difficult transition periods I've ever experienced. And I think, again, it goes without saying that war is not normal. And what you do in a combat zone, you only ever read about in books and think, wow, that's terrible. But I don't think the wow, that's terrible can even compare to, oh my gosh, we're living this terrible, we're doing this terrible. And so, yeah, it was coming back home. It was quite a transition.
Did you feel like the experiences of the women in the film rang true to your experience?
Yes, I would say, yes, absolutely. Here's what I will say. For folks in my era that were over there in Desert Shield, Storm, and Farewell, we had it a little bit better coming back home because of our Vietnam veterans, who one of their missions was to ensure that no veteran ever returning back home from any type of a conflict would ever experience what those courageous men and women experienced. It has since gotten even better because of conflict after conflict and what we've learned and what we've done to try to make it better for the next generation of soldiers going over there and putting their lives on the line, that when they come back, they are seen in the light that, yeah, these are real men and women, real moms and dads, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles and grandchildren and friends and co-workers that put their life on the line. And the one funny thing I just snicker every time I hear it, it's people are like, well, you chose to do that. You know what? I chose to join the military, and I chose to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Never in my wildest dreams did I think, well, I'm going to be deployed, especially right here from Canton, Ohio. So yes, in some sense, I did choose to serve my country. I didn't choose to be deployed to war. It comes with the territory. And when that time came, we honored our commitments. Nonetheless, when we come back home, whether we volunteered to go or we were drafted to go, the atrocities of war and that culture and climate of war and what a war zone represents are the same. No matter how you got there, the environment you're in is the same.
One of the interesting things about the film, to me, was the discussion of visibility of women when they return home. One woman describes going to a diner with other men, and an older man connecting with a man, talking to them, and just totally ignoring her. And there's a lot of discussion of the film really focuses on the pageant helps to benefit women veterans who are homeless. And they mentioned that there are a lot of programs that may impact male veterans, but they don't cater to women. What can we do to better promote the experience and the voices of women veterans, whether in our community or nationally?
Well, I think this is one of them. First and foremost, I have to say this because I do know after seeing this, I'm not going to lie to you, I'd never seen this documentary either. So for me, it was wonderful to see this and to even know that that's out there so that we can become ambassadors to support one another and women's causes in the military. I think it's an atrocity. I don't have any other word to say. There should never, homelessness shouldn't exist in our country anyhow, but it should never exist for men and women who serve their country and put their lives on the line. There should just not be such a thing as a homeless veteran. There just should not be. So to know that exists out there, which we all know it, but to know that it exists in the numbers that it exists was eye-opening even for me. I know right here in our community of Stark County, out of the 88 counties, I think we are the #1 with a veteran population. We have probably the highest vet population here in Stark County. We are fortunate that we do have the CBOC, the veterans organization right downtown Canton, the medical facility that's there. And it is one of the better ones we've been at. However, I will tell you, in my 40 years, I have seen where it's come from to where things are now. And there is a distinct difference between male and female veterans and how we are viewed when we have issues. You know, for a male veteran to cry because of what he witnessed in a combat zone, poor guy's got PTSD and there's all these horrific things, and it's absolutely 100% true. When women cry about those same things, we give credence to the reason women should not serve in combat. So then what you end up finding is more women are very tight-lipped and quiet about their experiences because they don't want to seen as weak. They don't want to be seen as weak, vulnerable, can't hand it leaders because you're of our gender, which in fact is not true. Vulnerability is not weakness, as we have learned. And as my bio says, I'm a CDTLF. I'm a certified Dare to Lead facilitator, and follow the tenets of Dr. Brene Brown, who has done national research on vulnerability and everything that represents. And one of the areas that she does talk to is our military. And we as women are extremely strong. In fact, I like to counter what most people say, is that it takes strength to be vulnerable. It takes strength to stand there and be authentic and to be seen for who you are. No armor, taking off our armor figuratively and emotionally, taking that armor off and saying, yeah, here I am. And I think the movement has allowed for us to do that better than we've ever been able to do it, but still not where it should be, and not anywhere near the comparison of what our male counterparts get. Better, but not nearly where it should be. I can identify with the restaurant piece. I drive a car, obviously, and I have a military license plate that's got the disabled emblem on it. And if I had a penny for every time I get out of that car, with or without my husband, and someone says, oh, what branch did your husband serve? And I just smile and say, this is my car. But it's, I think, an automatic assumption. But it's like, wow, here we are in 2020 looking at equality. And it's like, you can still see that lopsided scale that we really aren't seen in the same light as I think we would like to be, or as the expectation would be. Because no matter how you look at it, we're all soldiers. Once a soldier, always a soldier, regardless of your gender. We're all soldiers.
I was really struck by the experiences of mothers in the film, talking
Yeah.
about leaving children behind,
Yeah.
or even one of the mothers who had been homeless and transient, who had children, left the children with the father, and they weren't bonded to her, and
Right.
that experience was so heartbreaking, and it wasn't something that I had ever thought about in respect to being a woman serving in the military. Can you speak to some of those experiences of being deployed as a woman? How is it different? How is it harder? Is it similar?
I think the deployment piece is similar. We know what we're doing. We know where we're going. The difference is obviously that just even in looking right now in peacetime, the differences in a household with the parent-child relationship, father-child and mother-child, there are differences. We bond differently. Mothers by tradition are the caretakers, we're the compassionate ones, we're the boo-boo fixers, we're the, that traditionally has been the role. However, as life has evolved, we've strongly encouraged that with dads too. And a dad's relationship with the child is very different than the mom's relationship. And then you still have those, whether they're perceptions or what have you, the difference in what dads do versus what moms do, there are significant differences. And when we leave and go to war and put on the uniform and become a soldier, nonetheless, we are still somebody's mother, and the dads are still somebody's father. In our, like I had to have what they called a family support plan, which meant after I had my kids, which I was fortunate, my wartime was right, it was before they were born. I did not deploy after they were born. So, but nonetheless, I still had to have that family support plan that said, if the call comes, this is the plan for my kids. It was not an excuse for me not to go or not to serve. I had to have that care plan in place for who's taken care of my children for the duration of being gone. If you don't have that, that was grounds for being put out, for no longer being considered, this isn't going to work because you don't have a plan to take care of your children should the nation call and your duty serves, you can't meet that duty. So I think the differences there are, yes, when you have wee ones, if you're gone during that time, then the goal comes, you've served your country, you come back home, now you're back in the role of parent. You're taken off the uniform that says I'm carrying a gun and defending my country. Now I'm going back in to be cuddly, compassionate care. I want to love my children, mom, but they don't know you, especially when you're in those early ages that we left them in the care of other family members. And again, I feel very fortunate that I did not have to have that experience. I had time away from my children, a month. I think the longest was at a month, and they were in the care of my husband. And they were like 4 and 5-ish. So they knew I was gone. I could talk on the phone because, again, remember, during my time, we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have ways to communicate with our family. We had the old-fashioned letter writing that took 30 days to get to wherever you were at. But when you come home, yes, many of the women that I had worked with since, it's huge. The goal is to try to help create that bonding and try to help the women soldiers, because that's what we're talking about today. How do you find that balance of keeping a career as a military member and also being a mom? And the challenges are a bit different in that career field than any other. People may say, well, you balance being a doctor and a mom, or you balance being an engineer and a mom, or you balance being, a police officer and a mom. But in the military, you risk on a moment's notice, you're gone and you're going into harm's way immediately for an indefinite period of time. So those are some of the challenges that our service women face.
Besides facing some of those challenges, some of those women had advantages when they were serving abroad. One military nurse in the film talked about how she didn't wear her body armor when working with the Afghan population because her male coworkers wanted her to be seen as a motherly figure. They wanted people to connect with her. What kinds of advantages do women have when serving in combat zones?
I think that goes back to, I would have to say, by far not an expert in that arena. I would have to say it depends on what area you're in and the viewing of women. What is their perception of women, period? Some cultures do not appreciate strong women. Some cultures look at, we're subservient. You're not going to come up here. We're not going to speak to you. We don't have these conversations. We deal with the men. So I think there can be counterparts. I think our counterparts can be seen as, if they're viewing women as nurturing, compassionate, caring, can that have an advantage in certain situations that could be helpful to the lives of our servicemen and women? I think there could. And in that video where the nurse was talking about, I had to take off the body armor so they indeed could see I'm a female. And I think in that case, it was because you're talking a culture here where we were looking at children and what do women technically, for the most part, do with our kids. We're nurturing, we're caring, we're compassionate. And when they could see us as that, who knows, maybe it does alter their way of thinking. However, when you go back to the culture that, when I was deployed to war, if you remember clear back when, it was called Operation Desert Shield initially. And that's because over there, we were using women and children as shields to try to stave off. And so, again, would that have helped over there? I don't know. I suppose there could be advantages when you're looking for maybe a different tone in character, or how we're approached, or how we're seen, or what it is that they're looking for.
One of the women profiled mentioned how her mother encouraged her to get away from the Barbie and the Gem cartoons and put her in front of the G.I. Joe cartoons. And even though her mother was wary of her joining the military, she felt like having those experiences and seeing the whole spectrum of what was possible really helped her as a young girl. So I wonder, what can we do to normalize military careers for young girls? What can we do to make it seem like a possibility?
I think we have to continue to get out there in front of people to say, just like being an engineer or going to college or being a physician of any kind, the military is an option. And I think we are getting better at opening the doors to all career fields in the military. I think where the problem come in is there was segregation. And when we talk about the segregation, it's like, yep, men, you can go into infantry and combat arms. Women, you're going to go into the more administrative jobs, which back in the old days, and if you talk to any of our women Army Corps people, yeah, you made the coffee, you made sure that the male soldiers had what they needed to get stuff going for the day. It's not like that anymore. Okay, our women can go to college and have a phenomenal degree and come out and be an officer just like our male counterparts and serve as a combat strategist. They can make battle plans. We're right up there side by side. Now, are there still continued differences in the views that we're not combat ready or not designed to function? Sure, there are. And yet, again and again and again, you know, when you read into the stuff that goes on in our military, our women continue to prove we absolutely can multitask. We absolutely can think in a strategic manner. We absolutely can make decisions. We absolutely can march 22 miles and caretake and compete and defend and protect. And we do. So I think the more that we provide opportunities of, you want to be a nurse, you can be a nurse in any branch of service. You want to be a physician, you want to be an IT person, this is another avenue to do that. Now, with that comes obviously the risk of deploying to defend the nation, which is even a greater job that you don't have in any of the other choices for a career field. But we have to put it out there. We have to encourage our women that if this is what you want to do, pursue it. Talk to those, not just a recruiter. And that's what I tell even our high school kiddos. Don't just talk to a recruiter. Talk to females who have served and been in. Talk to family members if you have them in there and get their perspective, because the perspective of women like me who have served is going to be totally different than what a recruiter whose job is to get you in to serve is going to be. So utilize those women. You know, we have learned and come so far thanks to the women who have served back in Vietnam, and thanks to those women and those experiences clear back when from the Women Army Corps. They're the ones that have changed and shaped to where we're at now. And our generation of women who served have made it better, if you will, and fought and continue to fight for the same rights when we come back home, for treatment and to be seen as the same and not labeled in different ways because we were women who fought or women who served, but just we're soldiers and we deserve the same thing, because there wasn't a line in the sand that said women soldiers stand here, male soldiers stand here, and women soldiers, you won't be harmed, male soldiers, you will. It was the line and we all stood on it.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit about how the Me Too movement has impacted the military. Obviously, rape and sexual abuse and have been a major discussion point around the world the past few years, and
Absolutely.
it was touched on in the film. I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to our audience about that.
So, you know, if you know anything about the Me Too movement actually was started by an African-American woman named Tarana Burke back in 2006. And it was to bring attention at that time to women of color, to brown and Black women who were seeing in their young girls a whole lot more of what they term sexual assault, sexual abuse, exploitation. And without these young girls really even realizing this is what was happening. I think in one of her talks, she gives the example of like she was talking to a 7th grader who was explaining to somebody that she had a 21-year-old boyfriend and saw nothing, you know, it didn't bat an eye. And this was arranged by somebody. And so the movement began to bring awareness to sexual trauma, sexual abuse. And it started off with that, but over the years, it has grown. It went into the recognizing of survivors of sexual trauma, men, adults, and then it became worldwide movement of we're just no longer going to tolerate the sexual abuse of any human being. It also became known and something that can't be dismissed in the military. I know that even in our VAs, we have a sexual trauma. We have military sexual trauma. It's specific to those things that have occurred to women in any branch, and not just in combat, but just every day. And that can occur in several ways, just like it does as a civilian. But sometimes you have the misuse of a position or power, and there's fear. Here's what I will tell you. Most women don't want out. Most women want to honor and serve their commitment. I loved my career. Getting out was probably one of the biggest traumatic experiences of my life, because it was not my plan. It is not what I wanted to do. But because of other people's actions at that time, it was okay. So most women will stay closed mouth about it because they do not want to be seen as, oh, and then put out or labeled. So they live with that. So I think our VAs have done a better job of saying, yeah, we realize this happens. And there's within PTSD, and we're looking at if it comes from sexual trauma, there is the military sexual trauma and specialists to deal with that for our returning or women, period, in and out of service. So I think it's may have been overlooked, and well, I can tell you, I know the fact that it has. During my time, it was just not anything any female I ever encountered, from boot camp all the way up to getting out. You just weren't going to discuss it. And if it was occurring, you stayed tight-lipped about it. You might share it with one or two of your closest buddies. That was it. You certainly were not taking it to anybody above you for fear of what would happen to you. I think now it is seen, it's looked at, it's asked, and it's not tolerated to the degree that it used to be.
Can you talk some more about the issues that women face when they return to civilian life from the military? The film talks about PTSD, homelessness, drug and alcohol abuse, among other issues. Those are really serious. How
Yeah.
do women veterans specifically deal with those issues?
You know, we deal with and face a lot of the same things that our male counterparts. Women are not exempt from, drug addiction, alcoholism. We're not exempt from not only being abused, but being the abuser in a domestic violence situation. PTSD is pervasive. And I think PTSD amongst women, I'll speak for myself. I think we view it a bit differently, because think about it. Women traditionally by nature are caregivers. We're nurturers, we're moms, and then we go to a combat zone where we're anything but. We're not nurturing the enemy. We're defending and protecting, and oftentimes have to go into that mode of, oh my gosh, I'm going to be destructive. And then we come back home from a zone where I've been given an enormous amount of responsibility and in charge of the lives of other human beings and making decisions that affect, if we're coming home or not coming home, and if we're moving forward or not moving forward, whatever it is that we're going to do. And then I come home and I don't have that support that I've had around me to the degree that I've had. I can't just walk across the street to a chaplain and say, I need this, this, or this. There's not the big groups like we had that support one another, because we all had that same experience. I go back to my workplace, my job, that if I was a National Guard or an Army Reservist was waiting for me when I come back, or try to get into the work world. And the best that I can get is this, 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 and this, but I'm not fit to make a decision. I can't be a leader in the civilian section. And you're standing there thinking, wait a minute, I just got done doing this, 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 and this for a year. And you're telling me I'm not qualified. So I think we face those things as well. Just trying to find a job when you get back home. It's different. When I was a career soldier. So when I got out, I had 23 years of service. I did things in my military job that I would never do as a civilian. So I had different life experiences. It did make me a strong and better leader. Even though you may not be viewed that way, I know what I'm capable of doing. Now it's How do I do what I was doing there, but here? And what I mean by that is, how do I step up, step out, and be seen? How do I advocate for, like we did here? So we do face those same types of things of high divorce rates, alcoholism, drug abuse, broken families, PTSD, generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, abuse of medications, all because trying to cope. And I think some of us don't have. I was very fortunate that I have a strong support network and a huge, phenomenal family that I came back home to. But unfortunately, that is not the case for every soldier, male or female, coming back. But I think the tolerance, for whatever reason, is less for our women vets returning home. Almost as if to say the war was not as bad for you because you're a female, and we know you didn't do what the men were doing over there. But yes, they did. Like the one lady in the documentary says, I wasn't sitting over there playing cards or Legos. I was fighting. I was sleeping in sand. I was taking turns catnapping while I was aiming at my perimeter. I wasn't over there on a vacation sunning myself. We were in a combat zone. We were being bombed. We were trying to stay alive. So I still think there's a global perception that it's not maybe as bad for women, like the women in the video said. Yes, I would agree that the perception is totally different for our women vets than it is our male vets.
I didn't want the documentary to be seen as all doom and gloom by our
No.
viewers today. And one thing that struck me so much about it was how funny it was at times.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It was amazing to see women making angels in the sand.
Sand
or
angels.
the
Oh
things
yeah.
that they would order by mail and laugh
Mhm.
about. That was really really fascinating that they could find such joy in those types of experience. So I wondered if you had any really good anecdotes about funny experiences that you had in the military that you wanted to share.
Oh my gosh, I'm going to tell you. I was one of my additional duties was the morale, welfare, and support officer. And I'm not going to lie, I love to laugh. Laughter for me is probably my go-to defense mechanism, but it's also my go-to, probably one of the things that I use in leadership, because I believe we have to laugh. And it's okay to laugh. And it's okay to laugh in those scenarios. And I think if we didn't laugh when we were over there, who knows where we would be. We found ways to laugh and things to laugh at. Like one evening we put on our gas masks. Now they're hideous looking. If you'd see them, the eyes are this big and you got this thing over you and you have this little straw, and we would put those on and then we would make up dances and have dance offs, or we would try to do as many push-ups, or we would scare one another. We couldn't mail order anything when I was over there. We didn't have that opportunity. The most we could do is send a letter and receive a letter. And we were cautious about that because when you would receive mail, anything my family sent me was opened when I got it. And if there were words in what my family wrote to me, like, for example, here was one. If it said anything like, God bless you and be safe, God was blackened out, because over there, it was different the way they viewed it. So we weren't allowed to say those things. If there was any indication of where we were, it was lined out. So mail for us was a hit or a miss. But the things that we did do, like one evening, for example, was there was this cat. We don't know where this cat came from. We don't know how the cat got onto our compound, but the cat would hang out in the communication center. So we called him Camo Kitty. Well, Camo Kitty kind of had the reins of the yard, where we were at. Somebody had sent us this huge box full of canned goods. Well, within these canned goods were sardines and tuna. So one evening on a couple of the tents, we always trenched around the tent. And that was so if the rain came, it would fall off the tent and go into these trenches and not flood your flooring in the tent. It would drain down into the sand. So Camo Kitty was there were, you know, if there were annoying people, these were the types of things you did. So they took some of the sardines and some of the tuna and put them in a tent, the trench around one of these tents. And out of nowhere, a couple of cats came. And in the middle of the night, all you heard were these cats making this and rolling around and clawing, and people yelling then like, where in the, you know, some nice expletives coming, because the cats were chasing and trying to get to the tuna. We would take our water bottles, you know, and bet, you know, you dig them into the sand, it would get that hot, and it was whose water bottle was going to bubble up first. And so you would bet whatever you had to bet out of your meals. You know, we certainly weren't running around there with lots of cash, and paychecks were shipped home. So we would try to do those kinds of things. We would get together and just sit and tell stories of stuff we'd seen or experienced or what was going on. And unfortunately, you made light of some of the atrocities, because if you didn't, it was overwhelming. And it was, what do I do with this? You know, I'm from Canton, Ohio. What do I do with this? I don't know how to get rid of some of the things that we were doing, because it goes against everything we believe in as humans. So yeah, we found things to laugh at. We built a swimming pool over there. We had a major that found some plastic and dug down into the sand and put some wooden stuff around it and filled it with water. Now, it didn't last too long, but it was like, oh my gosh, we're gonna have a swimming pool. So it was goofy things like that we would sit back. Now you look back and go, what were we thinking? Well, you weren't. You were surviving, and part of survival is laughter. And so that's what we would do. Anything that we could think to do. Share stories, you know, stuff that would happen at home. Somebody might hear of this, and we would pass the message. And, you know, sing-alongs. I mean, we would make up stuff while we were over there. Someone would say a word and another person would add a word. Pretty soon you had the most bizarre statement or song that it was, and it was, you couldn't even repeat it. It was so bad, but we would just do, because it's what we had. What we did learn over there is what you saw when you looked left and right, in front and back, was each other. And that's what we counted on. We didn't have TVs, we didn't have phones, we didn't have, you know, tablets. That it just didn't exist back then. We had each other. And so we found ways to laugh and kid and joke and cry and scream and yell.
Can you talk to us a little bit about your current position? So thinking about 2020 and what a crazy year that it has been, and that many of us are working remote. You're working with students who are dealing with all sorts of issues, being
Sure.
remote. That you've talked a lot about resiliency.
Yes.
Whether you're a student or a veteran, I feel like that is an issue that we're all thinking about. Can you speak a little bit to what you're doing now, and those ideas, and taking resiliency and putting it towards this energy that we may have in finishing up the year?
So I think what we have to look at is, number one, we know that 2020 in and of itself has been traumatizing. And I would say that I have yet to meet anybody that in some way, shape, or form has not been traumatized by what has gone on. Okay. The difference is, do we want to stay stuck in the trauma, or do we want to move forward with resilient minded focus of, yep, this is crap and this is what happened, and I don't want to stay here. Okay. We need to move forward. This is a horrible pandemic. We have to learn to live within the guidelines of the pandemic, because we don't stop living. Mental health, as we know, is at an all-time high. What makes some people more resilient than others? We like to look at them and call them, you know, buffers. What are those things that this person has that maybe this person doesn't have? And it all goes back to what's in that circle. When I look at my own resilient factors, I have a very, very strong family. And I have a very, very strong faith. When I prioritize my values, it's faith and family. I have to have that. But I also have very strong outside those boundaries. I have a phenomenal core group of coworkers. I have a great group of women veterans from Woven, the Women Vet Network. I trained in Orlando a couple years back and came back, and it's to create a network for women veterans in your area that might not even know that one another exists. For an example, during this pandemic, we knew we couldn't meet and do whatever. We created virtual Zoom meetings. So tonight might be our women vets. I belong to a group of CDLFs, the Brene Brown trainers that I trained with in November of 19. And we called ourselves the Badass Brigade. And we literally, we have a network that we are in touch with one another. We support one another. What do you need? It may be a conversation, a virtual meeting. It might just be we keep each other going on Messenger. With our schools, what we're doing, because it's hit or miss, hit or miss, hit or miss, and we don't know from one day to the next like anybody else. Okay, we're here. We have everything in place that the CDC says to have in place. We our extreme precautions with our teachers want to teach. They want to be in the schools educating the kids, and parents want their kids in schools because we all know that's where they learn best. So what needs to be in place? We need to make sure we have good communication going on. We need to make sure that our kids, just like our adults, are connected to someone or something that's a grounding force. We need to know what protective factors do you have in place. Should we shut down or the back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So we know this is traumatizing. We're making the choice to say, but we have to be resilient focused. Yes, this has been a traumatizing year, but we're not staying stuck in 2020. We are back to work to some degree. We are back educating kids to some degree. And mental health is at an all-time high. There's more telehealth right now than there ever has been. And that's in the physical world and our mental health world. But it exists. So as opposed to having zero connection, it's some connection to reach out to say. But one of the things we continue to encourage people to do is you have to talk, you have to speak, you have to state your needs, you have to know beyond the shadow of a doubt that it is okay not to be okay. It's not okay not to say you're okay or not okay. That first and foremost, you have to know that it's okay to say no, that you know what, this isn't good with me. All is not right with my soul right now, and I need some assistance. Asking for assistance does not imply you have mental health issues. It means I need assistance. I kind of look at it as the grief cycle, okay? When somebody we love or care for very much dies, we kind of go into that cycle of sadness and we miss them and we need, at that moment, here's what we need. We don't stay there. We work our way back out and it's like, oh my gosh, I still miss them. But the same applies here in this pandemic. I miss, prime example, Catholic Italian huggy touchy. I miss being able to just walk up and hug my friends and my family. I miss doing what we normally did. We have to find other ways to do that. But to sit back and say, well, we're in a pandemic, I'm not doing anything. I'm staying holed up in my house, isolating, I'm not going to see, speak, or not healthy. We have to learn how to navigate life in the pandemic with the constraints to stay safe and keep others safe. And yes, we can do it. We are doing it.
Well, Margaret, I want to thank you so much for talking to us about the film and about your experiences as a veteran. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but I'm seeing so many people that are saying thank you so much for your service to our country. And I just want to echo that to you and the women in your Woven network. Please communicate that to them. And I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And anyone who's watching, if you tuned in late, you can still catch us on National First Ladies Library YouTube site and watch the whole discussion, or send a friend the link. Absolutely. And you can register on Hoopla to watch the film today, Serve Like a Girl. it is a really fun and inspiring watch. So really encourage people to watch that. And Margaret, thank you so much for your service, and happy Veterans Day to you.
And thank you very much, and to all veterans out there. Happy Veterans Day, and to all of our Gold Star families. Gosh, the sadness on this day, but the pride in America for the service that your son or daughter did. There just are no words. And for all of us that have served, you know, it says it best for the women veterans: serve like a girl. I am a girl. That's the only way I knew to serve. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and have a great day, everyone.
Yep.